Buenas tardes, buongiorno. My role today, they told me, is to be your cafe espresso after lunch, to wake you up, energize you after lunch. And then on top of it, to talk about design and business, and why the business world needs design and design thinking more than ever. Well, we live in a world that is changing at the speed of light, with an acceleration never experienced before, and there are a variety of different driving forces of this change. First of all, internet, the World Wide Web, that is creating global access to knowledge. Essentially, anybody interested or knowing something about something, take out their device, they Google the information, and they get all of that information. This is creating people, consumers, users that are becoming more and more savvy, smarter, demanding, more spoiled. The global market and the e-commerce connected to the global market is creating global access to purchase. This is creating a world where you may still eventually go to a store to buy what you have in mind, but then while you are there, you may buy something that is not available in the store, another brand or a different feature of a product or the same product at a more convenient price, while you are still there in the store from a competitor. This is creating a competitive scenario where while in the past we were designing a brand or a product against very well-defined competitors, today we design for a very much broader competitive landscape, and often against brands and products that we're not even aware of. We don't know they exist, or they don't even exist today. Social media is changing then everything over and over again, and just very recently. Essentially, social media are creating what I like to define as the filtration and amplification of information that are relevant to us through platforms that are the platforms of Facebook, of Twitter, of LinkedIn, Snapchat, and so on and so forth. Essentially, in those platforms, you choose people that by definition share your same interests and passions, and therefore, by definition, they share with you information that are relevant to you, and they amplify them for you. So as brands, we're moving from a scenario where we were crafting a message and imposing almost top-down to consumers that message through a TV-centric kind of channel, to a world where we're not even the actor of the conversation anymore. We become the topic of this conversation among people. More and more, therefore, we need to understand how to be relevant to people more than ever. We are moving from buying the right to say something to people to the need of earning the right to say something relevant to people. And that's why what we do offline, the way we activate those brands, how relevant are those products and the different kind of activations to people offline is even more important than what we do actually in digital, online, to activate those conversations of engaged consumers. And then, anybody, each of you can come up with an idea today, get relatively easy access to funding. The cost of tooling and manufacturing is going down, and new technologies like 3D printing, for instance, are taking it even more down. And finally, you can build your ecosystem of communication from the comfort of your bedroom with your laptop and go compete with big corporations and big brands. These big organizations don't compete anymore just with other big organizations, but with the proliferation of new entrants, of startups, of new products and new brands that are creating a very high complexity in the competitive landscape. And finally, Internet of Things is something that is starting and it will grow more and more in the coming years. Essentially, every single product that surrounds us is becoming smarter and smarter, more connected, and we need to figure out what is our role as a company in everything we do, our products, our experiences, to leverage this technology. We may feel that it's far out, the reality that is arriving, and there will be all those entrants that we were talking about a second ago, that sooner or later will leverage that technology to disrupt your market. Think about Uber, Airbnb, and many other examples of organizations, brands, startups that disrupt an entire industry, leveraging technologies connected to hyperconnectivity and the Internet of Things. This is creating a world where people don't buy just products. They still buy products, but they don't buy just products anymore. They buy much more. They search solutions, the product, the service, the brand, that are holistic for them across every touch point. They search experiences that are meaningful for them, and they search stories that talk about those experiences that are authentic for them. So all of these are keywords: holistic approach, meaning, and authenticity are becoming more and more important for us every day. And there is another variable, is the speed. Consumers consume content at the speed of light. Content being the product, but also, content be traditionally, that content that we create and we launch through our media, TV, and other channels, more and more social media, but then being also the product, the packaging, the experience in retail, in hospitality, and so on and so forth. Content at 360 degrees. So, if that's true, the top challenges we have been facing in the past few years, if I look back and when I started PepsiCo, are essentially three. One is how to be relevant to people in a world where relevance changes almost every day. So how to be on top of trends, how to be on top of what people want and desire and dream. The second is how to do it fast, understanding people and then launching fast. We always live in this sense of urgency that so many times at the beginning we're thinking was temporary and then think will stabilize. Think will never stabilize anymore. This is the world we live in today. And finally, authenticity, once again, is a word that a lot of people in our community eventually start to be tired of, but the reality is that we talk so much about authenticity because it's so important to be authentic to people, because we are on stage 24/7 with our brands, and if we're not authentic in our point of view, people will feel it right away. So if these are the challenges, design can really help this organization creating solutions that face this kind of challenges. First of all, we say consumers don't search just products, they search experiences. So how do you design an experience? What is an experience? First of all, it's the connection between people in a solution, could be a product, a service, a brand, in a space, that most of the time is the context of use and the context of purchase, in time. So by definition, it is a story. Don't ask a designer to design a piece of packaging or a product or a piece of communication. Ask them, first of all, to help you designing the overall experience. Starting with what I like to define as the practical journey. Is the idea of purchasing something. You purchase it, you receive it, you unpack it, you store it, and you dismiss it. Is the idea of seeing a space, of interacting with a space. It could be the interior of a car or the interior of a store, and you go there instead of somewhere else. You see the space from far away, you enter it, you discover it, you interact in the space, you live in time in the space, and finally you live from the space. So you can innovate just focusing on some of these areas. Both in PepsiCo and then in my past at 3M, the company of Post-it and Scotch and many other products, we identify, for instance, the storage part as a big opportunity when you want to increase consumption of consumable, could be food and beverage, or could be a sticky note or a piece of tape or so many other things. It's so important to take those consumables out of the closet in a situation, in a position, in a context where they are visible and accessible of people, and therefore top of mind for people. So you can innovate focusing on some of these areas, and then you need to work across every touch point of the brand to build that authentic, holistic experience. This is the experience. Now, that experience needs to be meaningful to people. How do you design a meaningful experience? Before anything else, what is a meaningful experience? Every time you interact with a product or a brand, it could be a luxury car or a luxury fashion brand, or it could be a mass market brand. You have two levels of interaction of people with the product and that brand. First of all, before anything else, there is the functional connection. You want something that functionally creates a benefit for you. And then on top of it, you layer two emotional kind of connection. The first one is that pleasure that you have in interacting with a product, in purchasing that product. Is intimate, is the reassurance, is the love. Imagine when you buy, a pair of Prada shoes or a Harley Davidson or a brand that is really resonates with what you really love, and it's you and the product, you and the brand before anything else. That's the emotional connection. Then there is the symbolic connection, is what the brand or the product is saying about you to the rest of the world. So essentially, everything everything that surrounds us, the crazy shoes I have today, my watch without hands, my haircut, my car, my office, my friends, my books, anything, tell a story about me to the rest of the world. We may be aware of the story or eventually not aware of the story, but we are communicating 24/7. And this is what we do as designers, brand people, innovators. We design the story. We design the functional, emotional, and symbolic value of products and brands for people. So to understand what is the purpose, what you stand for, what is the why you exist of the brand, and then creating experiences for people that are connected to what is relevant for them is really key. And this is what we mean we design the meaning, and we don't design just a product or a piece of packaging. Now, if that's true, how do you design meaningful experience? How do you design meaning? Now, we may talk for hours about this. This is one of the multiple entry points to this idea of designing meaning. Essentially, every time you interact with products and brands, there are 3 levels of interaction in what I like to define as the emotional flow. These are my 3 interpretations of the theories of the human scientist Don Norman. Don talk about the interaction of people with people and people with spaces. So the first one is what they call the visceral experience. Essentially, you see a beautiful woman or a beautiful man or a beautiful place, you're like, wow, is the butterfly in your stomach, is on your skin, is beyond rationality. It's something that grabs you right away inside, and you may love something or you may hate something, but there is a reaction that is transcending your rationality. Is seeing a collection of vintage can for 7-Up that we designed, and it's just, loving it and feeling that connection with heritage, with something, a past that we've been living in. And it's not just the packaging. Once again, as I told you, it needs to be always the full experience across every touch point. So it goes from multiple kind of activations on the street, in retail, all the way to collaborations in the world of fashion, licensing, to create the full world you want to aspire to and belong to. With that kind of approach, we're thinking about packaging. For instance, this is Pepsi last year, the emoji campaign, where the bottle becomes something to express yourself and share an idea, share an emotion. Once again, in social media, you take the bottle and you post, the pictures of the bottle with a message in social media. And once again, it's the bottle, but it's the full story. It's global and local, locally relevant, but globally impactful. And then is about building the full ecosystem. This is a collaboration we did, for instance, with the famous fashion designer Jeremy Scott on creating a line of clothing and eyewear connected to Pepsi emoji. And then there have been multiple events in the platforms of sport or music or fashion, art and design connected to that kind of story. With the same approach, we launched a few months ago Life Water, a brand of premium mass water. So it's more premium, but still in the mass market. We launched it during Super Bowl in February of this year. Every bottle is a collaboration with artists. The inside is that you walk on the street with these bottles, and the symbolic value of these bottles is, you want them to be aligned to your style, to your fashion. They become accessories. You're communicating to the world your sense of style, your focus on health and wellness, a variety of different messages. So how could we transform the bottle in something that people really desire and crave for? And so the bottle became a canvas of collaboration with artists. Every 3 months we launch a new bottle. We are now at the 3rd collection that we see here. So 9 different bottles, every 3 months, new ones. The second collection is the one that I really love in particular, is essentially the theme is women in art. 50% of artists in the world are women, but if you look at the permanent collections of museums, just 5% of the pieces are made by women. So deciding to push and support a minority within the world of art is an additional layer of communication we put on top of the packaging itself. But once again, then is building full story across every touch point, starting with the launch of the product that happened during Super Bowl in a concert a couple of days before with Bruno Mars, collaboration with Condé Nast, Vogue, and a series of people in the world to really create an experience that is as authentic as possible. Or mid-calories, carbonated soft drinks like Lemon, and once again, thinking about the full ecosystem. And the reason why I had this specific project is because we did it with the most famous woman designer in the planet that happened to be a Spanish designer, and this is Patricia Orquiola, and this is the work we did with her, and we presented in Milan during Design Week a few months ago. So the first experience is, the first interaction is the visceral one. Now, back to the analogy of Don Norman, you go out with this man or this woman and you love to stay with them. It's emotional and rational. You go in vacation in Bahamas and you just love it, and you think about your colleagues back in Madrid or in my case in New York under the snow. So it's that emotional and rational feelings when you interact with products and solutions is a fountain with a digital interface that gives you the possibility to essentially select the base, the drink that is going to be the base. Could be water, it could be a Gatorade, it could be a cola, and then you add flavors and you create your customized drink. It's about creating that emotional engagement, but then from a functional and rational standpoint, we needed also people to move fast in front of the machine, And so what is the right balance between emotions and rationality to create the perfect experience that is going to generate business growth? And with that kind of approach, we have been redesigning the entire family of equipment that now all of a sudden become an engagement tool. Before it was purely functionality. I need to get my drink, I get it, I go. Now is I can communicate to people, and I can also collect insights about what people prefer, what kind of drinks they create. They become then information for our innovation machine to create the drinks of the future. And with the same approach, we're thinking, this idea of customization connected to this idea of sustainability. We came up with Drinkfinity that we launched in Brazil last year, and we're going to launch in different parts of the world in the coming months and years. Essentially, it's a bottle that you carry with you, reusable, so totally sustainable. You put tap water in it, and then you have a pod with two chambers, one liquid that gives the flavor and one solid, imagine chia seeds or coffee powder or tea leaves and many other potential ingredients to create your fresh drink on the go. So natural and totally sustainable, we think obviously is the way to go for the future, and millennials are screaming for this kind of solution, asking for these kind of solutions, and then taking that kind of platform and using it in other brands, in other categories. So for instance, this is the case of Gatorade, and the story that combined both the smart machine I show you together with a smart bottle in a totally engaging proposition, both from an emotional standpoint and a rational standpoint. There is a video that tells you about this.
Your game is our lab. Introducing the future of sports fuel. Gatorade GX, your real-time hydration coach. Gatorade GX tracks fluid loss before, during, and after training. Capturing every moment of sweat. Measuring electrolyte and sodium loss in real time. Fluid intake is continually monitored with on-the-fly guidance, showing you when to hydrate while pacing your intake. Analyzing your fluid balance, Gatorade GX unlocks your personal fuel strategy. Recommending fuel formulas based on your electrolyte and carbohydrate needs. Conveniently delivered through an innovative equipment system. Replacing what's been lost when you need it the most. Track, analyze, and optimize your performance. Gatorade GX, built to fuel, customized for you.
This is an example of how we are really connecting the two, the emotional engagement, but then obviously in sport functionality is key. We have been experimenting with this system with the national team of soccer of Brazil during the World Cup, with Serena Williams, Usain Bolt, with a series of sports celebrities that we sponsor and we work with, and then we transfer that kind of approach to colleges in the United States. In the past year, we've been experimenting with them, and then we launch in the market soon a solution that is coming from that kind of approach. With the same kind of approach, we have been thinking about the carbonated soft drinks world, a world that is very different than the one of 20 years ago, when you had Pepsi and another player from Atlanta, and that's all. Today, we have energy drinks, we have juices, we have water, we have a different role of alcoholic beverages in society. So it's a world that is radically different. So how can we engage people back in the world of sodas and drinks? This is one of the experiments we've been playing with. It's called Fizz. It's essentially a place where you have an holistic experience from the product itself, and you will see what it is, to the vessel, the glass is a sphere, to the casting of the physiologists, of the bartenders, all the way to the space, is all designed to create that kind of emotional and rational engagement with the drinks.
So what is Fizz? It's a whole new way to look at soda.
This is not a drink, it's really an experience.
I'm excited to introduce you to the world of Fizz. Fizz is a whole new way of looking at soft drink mixology, which we like to call Fizzology.
They have these cool machines here called Pepsi Spires. They're already flowing now. What were you feeling? Batter up. Batter up. Then you take it over to these Fizzologists. These guys are taking the most unexpected flavors and creating the most imaginative drinks you can possibly imagine. Check it out.
They're loving getting to interact with it, what goes into it that makes it, watch something be created, and then get to consume it.
It was nice to see it made in front of your eyes. You got to do it and then eat what you made.
I love it. Really innovative.
Awesome. It was just cool to see it all come together.
My favorite part was watching them put all the toppings.
A delicious drink.
Having a great taste.
I love it. I love the flavor.
Fizz is not just a drink, it's an experience.
It's been a really exciting day so far. As you can see, we're really flowing now. 3, 2, 1.
So every single touch point from the design, we design what you drink. We design where the drink goes in, so it's not a normal glass, is a sphere. Everything is designed to create that engagement and push people to share it then in social media and essentially create user-generated content, have them becoming the best ambassadors of what we do. This also something very important, we'll talk in a second about this. This was a prototype, was an experiment. We did it for the first time during a communication event. It was the Innovation Fair. We sponsored the Innovation Fair of New York, the Makers Fair of New York. And instead of just sponsoring it, we are using this kind of communication events to experiment, to prototype, to propose to people new ideas and see how they react, and then come back with insights and then tweak those ideas, evolve those ideas. So there is a very clear ROI in communication of the event, but the reality is that we are experimenting, we are creating prototypes, and this is so important in the process of innovation because it creates confidence in the organization that what you're doing is the right thing to do, or kills ideas that are not relevant. This Fizz now is in the Hershey Park, in the amusement park of outside of New York. We have it in Disney in Shanghai, and there are a variety of other evolutions of this idea of Fizz in retail and hospitality that we are working on. The third level of interaction, going back to the analogy of Don Norman, is what I call the expressive relation. So you go out with it, you really like this person or this place, you go out with them or in the place, and then you are back and you want to talk to everybody about her or him or about your vacation. Social media are really the platform of this. You show pictures of every experience you had in the vacation with everybody. It's about you being so happy and engage about that experience, that you want to talk about this, you want to share it with the rest of the world. The same can happen with products and brands. You love so much, the experience with specific kind of products in our portfolio. 45% of our products in PepsiCo come from the world of health and wellness, and we need to tell the story more. And so we came up with this macro umbrella brand called Hello Goodness that put together in communication, in physical experiences in retail or through vending, all the different kind of products and brands we have in that kind of portfolio to tell that kind of story. Or is communication, more traditional communication. For instance, this was created during the Summer of Soccer, there was the Summer of Soccer World Cup 4 years ago for the Pepsi brand. It's not about communicating the functional value, the refreshment of the drink. It's about standing for something and then sharing it with the world. Pepsi the world is the brand of live for now, of enjoy the moment, is a happy brand. For that campaign, we took all the different soccer players that we sponsor. Leo Messi is one of them. We took a fashion music photographer like Danny Clinch, and we asked him to take these very cool black and white portraits of each of the players. And in a live event in London, we called different street artists from the different countries of the players to paint over the gigantic portraits their art. That became our campaign that everybody saw around the world. And then we took the art and we created different kind of collections of products with different brands, from Del Toro shoes to Penguin jackets, Bang & Olufsen and headphones, Shot skateboard, and so on and so forth, that we sold in Bloomingdale's in the US, in Colette in Paris, in a variety of different retails. But the goal obviously was all about creating something that people will love, enabling creative people to create something that other creative people will buy and will fall in love with, and finally will talk about. With the same kind of approach, we're sponsoring a variety of different creative fashion, art, and design events. This is Shanghai Fashion Week, and that article, that's the title of an Ad Age article. Ad Age, as you know, is one of the most important marketing magazine in the United States, and the event was totally local. It was a Shanghai, China event. It's Fashion Week Shanghai. But Ad Age from the United States talk about that event as something that Pepsi is doing, more globally, in a more broader way. And I always refer to this and mention this because we live in a world where local doesn't exist anymore. Anything we do, even if it's totally local for business, grow in a local area, is somehow local. Will always have an impact, positive or negative, to the global world if you're doing something extremely important, extremely relevant. In the positive, or unfortunately, also in the negative. With the same kind of approach, we try to connect those brands more and more with pop culture, with things that are relevant to people in the world that impacted our life. One of the main examples, in Back to the Future 2, the movie Back to the Future 2, Michael J. Fox, or Marty McFly, goes to his future and he searches for a Pepsi. And this is what happened when he asked for a Pepsi.
Hey. All I want is a Pepsi.
And here it is, Pepsi Perfect. And that day was the 21st of October of 2015. That was the future of Back to the Future 2. So on the 21st of October of 2015, we launched in Amazon Pepsi Perfect with a full integrated campaign. We sold out Pepsi Perfect in seconds, something like 20 seconds. Consumers got furious. They wanted to have the Pepsi Perfect. They've been waiting for a long time, so we had to rerun a new production for them. We sold more licensing for Pepsi in 1 week connected to this activation than an entire year for the brand Pepsi. So once again, understanding what is relevant for people at different levels and then play on that and creating propositions for them. What is interesting, you can find now the bottles for $200, $300, $100 online, and usually I point to the picture on my right, on my left, where there is not even the cola inside. There is so much innovation that often is product driven, but you can also innovate and activate, leveraging the other touch points and be extremely relevant for people in their way. Another example is the Cola House. Cola House is a space where you can experience different kinds of cocktails, alcoholic and non-alcoholic, based on cola nuts. So one of the ingredients of the colas is about romancing the story of the colas and telling to people something that most of the times they're not even aware of this ingredient called cola nut inside colas. And then creating in this environment a series of activations linked to the world of music, fashion, sport, that is so much what Pepsi has been doing in all its history. What you see here was the first prototype, and we go back to that idea of prototype, that we did in Milan during Design Week a few years ago. So it was a communication event with a very clear ROI, but we were experimenting. And then the second picture that you see is the permanent Cola House that we created a few years later in New York City. If you come to New York, you are welcome to come and experience this restaurant club that we call Cola House in the Meatpacking District. And with the same kind of approach, we're using, for instance, Super Bowl. Super Bowl, we sponsor the halftime show. It's the Pepsi halftime show. But what in the past was death and the 2 ads that we have during the game, more and more, Super Bowl for us is becoming a journey from when people land in the city, what happened in the airport, what happened when they take that cab or that Uber or whatever is the transportation we provide. They arrive in the hotel, what happened in the hotel, what happened in those 2-3 days they are there, all the way, walk to the stadium, what happened in the stadium, what happened at the Pepsi halftime show, and then when they leave. And so, for instance, we started a few years ago this series of concerts with big names like Bruno Mars or Pharrell, and in these containers, in these spaces where we activate the brands in a variety of different ways, fashion shows and presentation of new products, really a complete 360 degrees activations that didn't make any sense eventually 10 years ago. But today, because of social media, what happened in the city of Super Bowl can be amplified endless times and become eventually even more relevant and buzzworthy than the Pepsi halftime show itself. This is a video that tell you the story. This is Super Bowl a few months ago. There was the logo created with drones that would fly in the sky over the stadium. So every time I show these different kind of interactions with products and with brands, and I refer to the interaction where with people, everybody in the audience nods because it's who we are. We have that interaction every day with our friends and people we love, interact with, or the spaces we visit. That's the user perspective. This is what people is about. Now we can translate that in business value. Every time you have the visceral effect, in a way or the other, you're going to have the impulse emotional purchase. You go to a store with a list of things to buy, and eventually you get out with a series of things that you just fell in love with and you were not planning to buy. Every time you have the interactive relation, you're going to create emotional satisfaction and loyalty. The loyalty is so powerful because it goes beyond rationality. You are viscerally in love with a brand. You're just loyal to it. It's the line of people outside of an Apple store to buy the next device that they launch, even before they ever touch it, they ever saw it. They're so emotionally loyal to the brand, they don't want to switch to another brand, even if the other brand eventually may do something even better from a functional standpoint. The expressive one is creating communication and spontaneous PR, word of mouth, people becoming your ambassadors. Imagine when you go on vacation, do you check the internet side of the hotel, or you go to sites like tripadvisor.com to check what other people say about the hotel, the pictures of real users, the real photography of real users. So this is what this is about, having people becoming your best brand ambassadors. If you want to simplify, this is about purchasing, it's about repurchasing, and it's about recommending. Or if you go back to people, and this is so important for us as brand persons, innovators, and designers, because we design for them. So what happened to your solution? What do you need to create? You need to create a wow effect. You need people to fall in love with your products, packaging, retail experience, activations, communication. You need to create a wow reaction. You need to have engagement, and engagement is rational and emotional, and you need to make those people proud of being associated to you. You want them to be so proud that they're going to share what you do online with others, and offline as well, becoming your best brand ambassadors. More and more, you need to do it across every touch point of the brand and across every geography of the world. If you start to do it in just one area and you keep everything else the same, consumers are going to feel it right away. So don't even waste the money to do it. So many times, within a brand, I've been asked to redesign just one piece of packaging, one piece of communication. This is the 30 years of history of being a designer. And it makes sense because you need to start from somewhere, but just if you have a very clear vision of where you're going and by when you're going to get there, you need to get there as soon as possible. So you will suffer a little bit, but the goal is to arrive there. Too many times, though, you start with a little step, you start to modify something, and that something eventually is not going to succeed right away because you're not yet authentic, you're not yet believable, and then they kill the entire initiative because you started in that way. So the ideal scenario is change everything in once if you can within your company and brands. Now, we need to move more and more with that kind of approach from the bottom of this experience pyramid to the top, playing across every part of the pyramid, not just on the top. The bottom is the more traditional approach to innovation, is being focused on usability, on reliability, on functionality, on what we call utilitarian needs. And for a brand like Pepsi, that means to compete with another cola. Is more or less carbonation, is more or less calories, is flavors, and so on and so forth. Then you go up, is the world of pleasure and convenience. Once again, pleasure, emotional, convenience, more rational, is what we call the demand spaces, is an evolution of the occasion of use. Essentially, you may drink a cola, but you may drink an energy drink or a glass of water in different kind of occasions, when you are at home having a meal with your family, when you are on the go walking to work, or tailgating outside of a stadium. And then we can move to the world of dreams and meaning. We've been talking for the past 40 minutes about meaning. Is the world of brand spaces, is where your brand stands for something that is relevant to people. The why of the brand, the purpose of the brand, the point of view of the brand, that is so obvious and so scary because it's by definition polarizing. If you have a point of view, it means that you think something, you don't think something else. And when you serve the mass market, this is scary because it's polarizing, but it's the right thing to do. This is where Pepsi eventually competes with Apple, with Nike, is where Pepsi competes with brands that stand for something in the world. And that's a beautiful business opportunity because it gives you the possibility also to stretch your portfolio in adjacencies outside of your core market because you're relevant to people and you have a message to give. Now, this kind of approach can be applied to the products that we have today and the brands that we have today. So the most of the example I gave you here are either products and brands we already had or products and brands that we already launched. Obviously, as you can imagine, we're working also on the products and brands of the future, and that kind of approach is an approach we're applying to the future of hydration, the future of sport, the future of retail, trends like mass customization, the future of hospitality, and so on and so forth. I cannot share almost anything with you about this for obvious reasons, but there is a video that summarizes a little bit of our vision of the future of food and beverage for PepsiCo.
Imagine a world where breakfast isn't simply made to order. It's biometrically tailored to meet your body's very own unique needs. Where water isn't merely made clean, it's purified from the sky, harnessed at hydration hubs, and augmented with the nutrients you desire. Available around the world. Where fruits and vegetables aren't just locally grown, they're harvested within arm's reach. And transformed into on-the-go eats. Imagine a world where food is sustainably packaged from bio-based innovation and responsibly recycled in every city around the planet. Where a snack isn't just instant food. It's pure goodness on demand, fueling your afternoon and maximizing your goals. Where a table is smart enough to know exactly what you need and turns a night of music, drinks, and entertainment into an experience to remember. Imagine a world where the products we make bring joy to the planet and the people they are made for.
And here we investigate. Many of the trends that are happening today is customization, mass customization, personalization in general, health and wellness, a variety of different ways to deliver products, sustainability. So it's about having a vision, understanding where we want to go, and then working on today, from activations today to short-term innovation projects to mid and long-term innovation projects with that kind of vision in mind, and then aligning everybody in the organization around that vision. Now, you know, when I share all of these different examples of what we're doing with Design at PepsiCo, many things seem obvious or easy or is amazing, you know, what's going on. The reality is obviously there are many, many challenges in creating and evolving and integrating a new culture within an established, successful organization. And I want to share a few of them with you. The first one is managing risk. It's so important to manage risk, obviously, in these organizations because we have a specific kind of commitment to our shareholders and the finance world to deliver on expectations. So we need to manage risk. And design can really play a very, very important role in the management of risk. If you think about design, you know, you can have the output of design, products, packaging, fashion, clothing, and retail, digital, and so on and so forth. But then you have what the Americans call design thinking. Design thinking is that way of thinking of the design community to arrive to a solution. And it's the connection of three areas: empathy, strategy, and prototyping. Empathy is about understanding deeply people, needs and wants, and therefore what is relevant to them. You may buy these eventually. You know, you go to a design firm and you ask the design firm to deliver you a solution that makes sense for the world, and probably they will do a good job because they understand people and society in an important way. But then there is another element that is strategy. So is what is relevant to the company, for the culture of the company, for the processes of the company. For instance, the operations, manufacturing ability of the company, the business model, and so on and so forth. So relevant to people, relevant to the company, the connection of the two is what is relevant for us to drive business growth. Now, this is something that you cannot really buy too much, because it means that once you have that insight and that idea and that concept, you need to go through a series of constraints, time to market, manufacturability, your business model, even the culture, for instance, of your sales organization, that all of a sudden needs to sell something they're not used to sell. They used to sell functionality, and now they need to sell emotion. They used to sell a promotion associated to your package, and now they need to sell experiences. So there are so many different things that happen between an idea and when it goes to market. And innovation is when that idea, that is an invention, goes to market. It's not the idea. It's going to market and be successful. So empathy and strategy, key. Now, many business people in the audience or in general in these years, when we talk about this as designers, the reaction is, well, we do it. We don't need designers. We understand people, and we own strategy, obviously. So why you designers think that you're going to understand people better than us or do strategy better than us? The answer is going to be, well, but we do things in a different way. We look at things in a different way. So we'll take business decision in a different way. We'll understand people in a different way. And that conversation is going to take forever. There will be never an agreement. And design will fail because we are smaller, weaker, we don't have control, we don't have power. The reality is that then there is another element that is called prototyping that makes the difference. Prototyping essentially is about understanding something that is relevant to people, then is relevant to the company, and right away start to prototype. Create a mock-up, a sketch, start to visualize it, put it on the hands of your investors, of your CEO, of your boss. Start to create right away. And the value of prototyping is so important, and it's owned just by the design community. And here I'm not saying that designers need to lead brand building or innovation. No, it's a cross-functional kind of work. Is marketing, is business in general, is the world of R&D, of technology, of manufacturing, but then give a seat at the table at those people as well, giving them the possibility to those designers to not just prototype for you, but to be part of the conversation on empathy and strategy together with you, all together. Now, why prototyping is so important? Well, there are different kind of values associated to the idea of creating something right away. First of all is the value of alignment, the power of visualization. How many times you have been in a room and you discuss something for hours and then you all think you're aligned, you get out of the room and everybody goes in different directions. If I say knife now, each of you is going to visualize a different knife. But if I design a knife, now all of a sudden, we are all aligned around the knife. You may love it or you may hate it, but we are all aligned. So there is not risk of misunderstanding. Now, I have this knife here that I designed, and the marketer in the room may tell me, well, the brand is not visible enough. And the technologist, the R&D person may tell me that the blade is not sharp enough. And the ergonomist may tell me that the handle is not comfortable enough. And a lot of people in the room may think, my God, this designer is so bad. He designed such a bad knife. The reality is that the value of prototyping is that one. As soon as possible, start to create something, because you're going to enable all the other functions to be part of the creation of the idea, to co-create in parallel instead of doing it in sequence. How many times, a part of the organization, R&D, does something that it push over the fence, that's something to another part of the organization. Prototyping gives you the ability to work all in parallel, all together, and co-create within the organization, but also eventually outside the organization. You can take it to customers, to consumers. We do it continuously. And the example that I gave you earlier of Fizz, of Cola House, we prototype, we customers, consumers, and influencers at communication events. That's one example. There are many other examples where you can keep, the privacy of the experiment in a better way in a variety of different fields. But it's so important to leverage the prototyping to innovate altogether. And finally, engagement is what I call the power of the shiny object. These CEOs, many of you are CEOs, and investors in the business world, they get bombarded every day with ideas or requests for funding. And not just in the field of innovation, not just about creating a new product, but in any field. So it's so important when you go to ask for something, to go with a prototype, with something that is going to create, first of all, that kind of emotional engagement in the person in front of you, the excitement. Before being CEOs and investors, they're human beings. We are all human beings. And then that sense of urgency of, oh my God, I want to sit in the market, let's do it. It happened to me so many times. You go, you talk about things that you don't have anything, and then, the hour later, there is another request, another topic. But if you have something in your hands, it's so crazy, powerful to engage the organization, unlock sponsorship, unlock funding, and then it's not just with the one that gives you the money, but with, engaging the rest of the organization, other functions, other geographies, especially if you're in positions where you're more of an influencer than controlling resources. Now, all these 4 different values are creating, first of all, efficiency by driving speed. In the same amount of time, you can have a lot of iteration, or you can reduce the time and have the same amount of iteration you had in the past without that kind of approach. Drive efficiency by decreasing the cost of what we do, by decreasing either time or increasing the number of experimentations. It creates co-creation and inclusion, and therefore drive up quality, because essentially you are leveraging the know-how of a variety of different players within the company and outside of the company. Is a different form of validation of consumer insights, and we'll talk in a second about how problematic is consumer insights done in the wrong way, because it keeps killing innovation by fostering mediocrity in the system. And finally, build inner confidence in people that what you're doing is the right thing to do. And this is so important, because to mitigate risk, to control risk, we have been creating so many different methodologies in these corporations in the time, in the years. But the reality is that innovation is by definition risky. And by definition, you will make mistakes, failures will happen. I come from a company like 3M, and I was observing those years the R&D community, the science community. They know very well that to arrive to one innovation, they need to do thousands and thousands of experiments. The problem of the business community is that they call those experiments failures of mistakes. You need to design a business model, a system that allows for failures and allows for mistakes. And you need to protect the people making those failures and mistakes, or better, making those experiments in their career and in front of the public opinion. It needs to be part of your strategy. The second challenge is connected to people. I love the theme of this World Business Forum this year, humanification. Innovation is all about people. Design is all about people. Therefore, we need to understand people in a very, very, very good way. And this is a slide I've been sharing now for 15 years in every single presentation I did. Is the prehistoric man inventing the wheel. And he goes to his prehistoric man consumer research people. And he's like, look, I invented the wheel. And they're like, yeah, we love it. But, just to be on the safe side, we ran it past a focus group. And so here, right, the wheel, they become a square. Now, there is still a hole in the middle. There is still the same amount of material, more or less. So they've been helping the poor prehistoric innovator man, And because consumers were like, oh, this shape is not familiar. I don't know it, I never saw it. By the way, it's dangerous, it may roll away, I may lose it. So we arrive to a situation so many times where we have a very good idea, we bastardize the idea, we average down the idea by tweaking things and adding things. I mean, there is a beautiful video of 15 years ago, the parody of Apple against Microsoft in packaging. I don't know if you ever saw it, but Google it, it's very interesting. So we keep adding bullet points and all kinds of things because consumers are telling us this, and we end up with something that is very, very average. It fails in the market because it doesn't have the integrity of the initial innovation, and those guys go back to the innovator, the brand person, the designer that developed that idea, and they're like, you see, we try to help you. We tweak a little bit your concept, but even if we tweak it, it didn't work out. And most of the time, the drama for this organization is they don't see the truth. They're not aware that they have the wheel, but they never launched the wheel. They launched the square, and they failed, but they had the wheel in their drawers. And then somebody else arrived, and they launched the wheel, and they're like, oh, but we invented it here before. Oh, it was, we had that idea. Oh, they were lucky, or whatever. So, again, when I was showing this, the consumer research community was like, oh my God, Mauro doesn't believe in consumer research and insights. And as a designer, obviously I strongly believe in it. It's what we study at school. At 19, we go to university for design, school for design, and we study that. We study the importance of listening to people. We listen to people. We observe people. We listen to people. We just don't believe them. Essentially, we interpret what they tell us. They know what they know, but to do innovation just looking at what they tell you is like to try to go forward looking at just the rear view mirror. We need to understand what they tell us, observe them, and then act with leadership. Leaders as individuals, as business leaders, and as brands and companies. And we need to manage their risk, balancing methodologies like consumer research and other methodologies with our inner confidence. Because innovation, at the end of the day, is all about risk, intuition, and people taking those risks and having the right intuitions. And therefore, this is the last challenge I want to leave you with. If innovation is all about people, meaning that it's all about the people we design for, but it's also about us, people, designing, and everybody surrounding us, giving us the possibility, enabling us to design the right solutions, then the selection of those people is key. Starting with the design world. If any of you decide to build a design organization or to inside your company, first of all, try to find people that have a holistic approach to design. Design is a big word. It's like science. You have chemistry, biology, and so on and so forth. In design, it's the same. Graphic design, industrial design, interior, digital. They're really, really different disciplines. At the point that there are different kind of schools, different entire universities to form the different kind of backgrounds. Your leader needs to have an holistic approach to all the different areas. Because our brands, once again, are on stage 24/7, and we need to design the full story of the brand. They need to be business savvy. Don't believe on designers that tell you, oh, we are creative, we don't understand business, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, I'm going to leverage you. No, you need designers to be able to engage with you in a business conversation. There will be also the hyper-creative designers, and we have plenty of them in PepsiCo, but we use them in specific areas. And then we have plenty of design leaders that understand business and can communicate with the business world. You need to have people that are visionary, but they're also very pragmatic and know how to execute that kind of vision into the everyday life. So once again, there are so many designers that are amazing visionary, but then they don't know how to execute it, and they fail continuously in that kind of execution that is so key in the company. They need to be entrepreneurial. I always tell my team, if you are not a PepsiCo, I wanted you out there building your startup, creating your own company. We need that kind of people. When you create a new culture within an organization, you need to have that kind of mindset. And they need to have a very high EQ and empathy, because at the end of the day, changing a culture, they need to take people with them and with us in that kind of journey. And finally, they need to be design thinkers. And design thinker now goes beyond the design community. Anybody, a lawyer, a finance person, a marketer, anybody can be a design thinker. What is a design thinker? Well, this is the summary of a series of qualities and characteristics that define the way of thinking of a design thinker, of an innovator. We can call it innovator if you prefer, that I decodified in 2 articles for the Design Management Institute review about one 7 years ago, one 5 years ago. One is called Your Design Process is Not Enough, Hire Design Thinkers. And another one is called Love Letter to Design. I needed to do it not for the articles, but I needed to do it for my company, because we were searching these kind of people. So we had to list the qualities of these people for our HR organization, our recruiters, to find those kind of people. And very quickly, so what are these design thinkers? Well, first of all, they're people that are visionary. They look at the big picture and they know how to go back and in an analytical way rebuild the path to the big picture. They are elegant, meaning they know the perfect balance between functionality and emotion, between all the different variables in the innovation process. They are polyglot and storytellers. Don't try to put them in a bucket within your organization. So many times it happens because we need to define the job description, accountabilities of the function. The reality is that we need these individuals to be storyteller, connectors with other functions, and dialectical in their approach. They are intuitive, they trust their intuition, they trust their guts. And finally, they are in love. We hear so many times this idea of customer satisfaction, you know. What is satisfaction? It's about trying to fulfill a specific need for people. But when I hear about customer satisfaction, my answer usually is, I don't care about satisfying anybody. I want to love our customers and consumers. And many people maybe, is Italian or Southern European, and they love and these things. But, think about the meaning of love. Love, when you love your kids or you love your wife, husband, parents, is about doing something that they don't expect. It's the magic, it's the surprise. It's something that really excite them and shake them. This is what love is about. It's protecting that good idea and the intent of the idea across all the constraints, manufacturability, cost, time to market, and so on and so forth, until it arrives to people. This is what love is about. And from a behavioral standpoint, we want people that are curious. They love diversity. They listen with humility. It's so easy to fall in the trap of arrogance when you achieve a certain position. Listen with humility. But then in the meantime, be confident and take decisions. So many times, listening and not acting is the problem of many of these organizations. By definition, when you innovate, you will find roadblocks. You need to be resilient, resistant, and optimistic, and always in quest, always trying to go for the extra mile, very aware of yourself, and always having a smile, because at the end, what we do is extremely fun. And that's the way we need to think about everything we do. If we stop having fun in what we're doing, it's better we stop what we're doing at all. I talk about love. I love to define designers and innovators in general as people in love with people. Everything that surrounds us is designed by somebody. Everything. Our shoes, clothing, cars, glasses, this theater, everything is designed by somebody. And therefore, as innovators, designers, brand people, we can add moments of fun, of convenience, of health, comfort, style to the life of people. If we do it in a positive way, all of these moments are fragments of a broader social happiness, of a broader potential social happiness. And therefore, as designers, innovators, brand people, we need to try to design products and solutions that are sustainable from an ecological standpoint, from a visual standpoint, avoiding, for instance, visual pollution, from a social, emotional, and spiritual standpoint. If we are driven by this, if we really do this every time we work for a company, we have really the great opportunity of designing together, designers, business people, R&D, manufacturing, all the different functions, all the different backgrounds, a better world, a happier world, a world that is better for us and for the generations to come. Thank you.